Welcome to the JAMODI Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders, so let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI Podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here.
5 years in college basketball, I would imagine your daily habits were a big reason why you're able to have such an amazing career. So what are some of those daily things that you did or still do that set you up for success?
I really think the most important thing is, one, you got to communicate. The successful coaches, one, they're teachers. And I started as a fifth grade teacher. I only did it for 1 year.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I wanted to be a college coach. Our whole family taught and coached. My older brother's in the Wisconsin High School Hall of Fame. My younger brother, David, coached college. And then he actually is in the Illinois High School Hall of Fame. Coach John Shire. His Glenburg North team won the state championship. It was really cool. John brought back the whole team to Duke this year for a game, and brought his guys, because it was also I think the 20th anniversary of their state championship. So, which was cool. But sisters, dad taught. So I think it's so important. You got to be a teacher. To be able to communicate is so important. To talk to the players. We mentioned earlier, Deron came in every day. I didn't have to beg him to come in. He was comfortable with coming in. But if they don't come in, you got to make them come in, and you got to find ways to talk to them. I also heard Dee Brown at clinics talk years ago. The guys that don't talk during stretching, he would just go walk and sit next to them and kind of act like he was stretching, so you got to have communication with them. It's so important. And then, then the leadership is getting the most out of guys, bringing them together. I think those are keys with the coaches. And then that all becomes part of the daily habits. Every morning when I got to the office, I went and saw every coach and, what's going on? Who'd you talk to last night? What do we need to work on if somebody has a scout? What do I need to think about? Just kind of getting that going. And then the staff meetings. To me, when people say, what do you miss about coaching? I miss the staff meetings. I miss their interaction with the players. That was special for me. And we would always meet. We'd watch some film. The guy who had the scout was, he had to give his little presentation. And then we'd all sit, if there was somebody, let's say we're playing Michigan State and they run a certain set. Well, I tell them, let's see about 10 of those sets. And then we all sit and talk. How are we going to guard? How we, or then the other end, they guard a certain way. What are we going to do? And then that goes to your skill development drills. How we're going to attack the ball, they're icing it. How are we going to attack that? So now we can work on that in the skill development. So that, interaction, the one-on-one, the group. And then I talked about teacher. It goes back to the lesson plans. They all went to lunch. I didn't go to lunch. I love to sit. That was my time to, do my practice plan. I loved it. It was my, pride and joy. And then I would do that, get it typed out. I give it to the coaches, and then they would go through it. And then somebody would say, hey, we need to add this, coach. We need to do this or whatever. And then we kind of tweak it. And then the same thing, once the players started, they started coming in the office. Again, your Deron Williams, your Barry Browns, guys that they love coming in and watching film, and so they're coming in, you're talking to them. Then you get down to, I told the coaches, it's so important to get down on the court at least 15 to 20 minutes early for the guys that are there early, and start, one, talking and finding out how they're doing their day, all that stuff. But then also starting to work individual with them. And then obviously you got your practice, your skill development, your breakdown of whatever your concepts, your defense, your offense. And then after, and sometimes as a head coach, you got it, it's at a university of high level, you're an ambassador and you got to run somewhere or do a talk or something. But when you don't, I tried to always stay. And guys that are struggling, I tried to take them and work on shooting, or whatever it is, and just be with them. Guys want individual attention, and as best you can do that. And then you go back to the office and you're talking to the coaches. What do you think? And then I always told the coaches, I don't care if they get after players, but they better talk to them after practice. Either, you can get on guys. And I learned this from my old boss, Coach Katie. He was a master at it. He would berate guys. And this is old school stuff. I mean, I know you can't do some of that stuff now, but he got after him. But those guys love him to this day. He's 80, he turned 88, I think, in May. And those guys just, when you hear them, they loved him because he talked to them. I saw him, Brad Miller, longtime NBA guy, all-star, Olympian, the whole bit. He kicked Brad out of practice. He was so mad at him. I was worried for Brad. I'm looking around for him after practice. I go back up to office and coach is up there laughing and making jokes and stuff. And I kind of peek in his office and there's Brad. He's telling Brad stories and joking with him. And he had just kicked him out of practice and told him he was the worst player in the history with a lot of adjectives around it. But again, so I learned that from him. Once he told me, I got mad at a player. I was young. I was so fortunate to be college coaching, 22 years old, 23. And I got mad at a player and he was just an okay player. One day he just kind of quietly said, "Hey, you haven't been talking to Ryan at all." And I was like, "Yeah, he's a knucklehead coach, blah, blah, blah." And he goes, "I just have a question for you. Who's the adult and who's the young man?" And I just kind of hit me. And, I said, "I'm the adult coach. Yeah, I hope so." And he goes, "Well, then act like one and go help him." And so then, and it just kind of changed my relationship with them and my thoughts of it. So whether you're going to work with them after practice, you got to text them, you got to call them, and you got to make sure they understand. So they, if you got after them, you want it not to be a bad thing, a good thing. And so I think that was always part of it. Then at night, late, I tried to give some family time as much as I could. But when they all went to bed, now I'm talking to the coaches. They're sending me clips with different things. I watch film late at night. I was a late night guy. So that was kind of the daily routine that we went through and what I tried to do. And one thing I'm really proud of with my assistants, I want them to be successful in the future. So I learned from Coach Katie. I was involved in practice. I was on the court. I was talking. I was, if I'm in charge of the scout, I'm giving the scout. So I learned, I'm sure you know Alvin Brooks, obviously.
Yeah.
Al, when he was with me at K-State, I always have the assistant coaches do the radio. And I didn't think it was a big deal, like the pregame radio, scouting report,
Oh, that's
things
cool.
like that.
Yeah.
And Al came up to me one day and he goes, "I just got to thank you." And I said, "For what, Al?" He goes, "To let me do the radio." And I it's helping me because I don't have the time. But he said, "Coach, I never got to do this and it's going to help me for my future." And again, little things like that. You're developing assistant coaches and I'm proud of what my guys have done, the success as head coaches, as continuous as assistant coaches all over the place. And it's fun. Not only are you hopefully helping your players, but you're also helping your coaches.
With so many golden nuggets there. And I kind of jotted down a few notes to go back through. One is I love the idea of us viewing ourselves more as teachers than just coaches. And especially if you are in the high school world where you literally, most of the time, we're going to have a classroom that we have to do things in. And as I recently got the job at Waco Midway High School. And so making a transition from Dallas, Fort Worth back to Waco, which has been really fun. But in my second interview with the principal, she made a really good point about the classroom. She said, "Remember, this is 90% of what your job is."
Yes.
And in my mind, there was a light bulb moment because I think I viewed it the other way around. The coaching part is the 90%. The 10% is that teaching part in the classroom. But when we view ourselves as teachers, I think what that does is it makes us have extreme ownership over what's actually happening because we're not just coaching, we're teaching. And if they're not learning or getting the things that we're teaching, it's not their fault. It's our fault because we're not teaching it properly or the best, right?
Yes, there is no doubt. And, again, I only taught fifth grade 1 year, but I think it really helped me, getting kids, you have all different learning abilities. Deron Williams came in and said to me, Coach, why are we doing all this scout and report film, walk through, live, back to walk through, and he goes, we don't need this. I said, you don't need it, Deron, but your teammates knew it. And you're going to
Yeah,
be mad
that's a
at
good
them when
point.
they screw up, in the game. And he looked at me and he just walked away. It's like, but everyone learns differently, as in the classroom. And I was fortunate, I came from a teaching family and my brothers were high school coaches. So I was hearing their side. And when I go talk to high school clinics or clinics, it's mostly high school coaches. I could hopefully, as a college coach, a little bit relate to them because it is a tough job, and you are teaching, and you're still you got to get your practice plan. You got to have interaction with the players. You got to have interaction if you have a staff, and so it's a tough job, but you are a teacher, and it goes back. I had the good fortune of being around Coach Wood, and he was a Purdue grad. It just some circumstances. He came back a couple times. We have a friend I have a high school friend that helped us in Wisconsin that helped us get into coaching. With him, he gave us my brother and I our first jobs, but he would go to Coach Wooden's camp, so he got to know him through the years. And Coach Wooden always talked about being a teacher first, and that was one thing it really resonated with me when I listened to him and had opportunities to talk to him, walk with him, and listen. He was a teacher, and I think that's so important. And there's different ways of teaching. As you know, I mean, everyone doesn't learn the same, so you got to figure out how can I get everyone to learn in that team, in that classroom, and get that same message across.
Almost everything we take them through, I think, and this is a PGC idea, that there are 3 ways. You got some guys need to hear it, other
Yes,
guys need to see it, and then
yes,
some guys need to do it. And what's the best? How do we get all of our the guys on the same path? Everything we teach, they get to hear it, see it, do it. So that way you're making sure you're not missing anybody. And a great nugget, coach, you said, is getting down to the court early. I think that's a great way to steal moments with players because I've been able to do this for 4 years now, which has been really fun. And sometimes coaches will talk about things that they wish they could have done more, or like you even have done the things you miss. You miss the coaches meetings, and I'm sure you also miss the interaction with players in that time. But they wish they would do that more. Getting down there early is a great way to have more moments, and also too, more is caught than taught. And so when we want them to be early to the gym because that's a good habit for leaders and for them to be prepared, well, coach, it just makes sense that we're there as well.
yes. And I told them, and again, not only yourself, but your assistants too, and get down there and just don't stand there and be mad at them. Talk to them, and help them figure out maybe they had a bad day. And then you can tell me, hey, something happened at home or, whatever. So now they're going to struggle. So I can say something to them or help them or know they're not going to have the effort today or they had a bad test or some, whatever happened that you can help them. I think it's so important because you don't want to waste you only get so many hours of practice and now it's less and less. When I first started with Coach Gady, you talk to Matt Painter and guys, they'll tell stories and obviously it gets exaggerated, but we were going 3.5, 4 hours a day and never gave them days off. But but you didn't have summer workouts, you didn't have all that other stuff. But it's different. You want to really use your time, and it's so important. Again, it goes back to what you talked about. Different people learn different ways, and that's what I tried to explain to Deron. He could learn just because I said it. And and other guys needed to see it, and other guys needed to go through it. So we had to continually go over it and over it. And then, and that, getting down there early, not only the interaction, but also the chance to work on something. I always talked about players. I said Deron would come into office, Barry Brown would come into office. There's other guys they don't even want to see it. And especially when they're younger and they've been yelled at for the first time and corrected. I guess I say yelled at, corrected, told they're not as good.
Yeah.
You recruit them and tell them they're the greatest thing ever, and they get there, and all of a sudden, the first practice, they don't know how to
There's a
dribble, they don't
switch.
know how to pass, they don't, So you've been through that, you know. It's just, so I always thought there's a wall between the coaches and the players, and the quicker you can get those players over that wall, the easier it is to coach them, and they're going to join you as a group. And usually freshman year, you're afraid, you're afraid of the coaches, you're struggling. Sophomore year, a little better. Junior year, you're starting to climb over it. And then senior year, hopefully you're part of the whole thing. But the earlier you can do that, the easier it is for you to, for them to understand. And I always thought redshirt, obviously you can't do this in high school, but in college, I thought it was the greatest thing in the world because now they were on the wall between the players and the coaches, and they weren't competing for a spot. And they would come in the office and say, Coach, why doesn't he listen to you? You're trying to help him. Well, no kidding, but he would see it from a different angle because he, and he almost became part of the staff. And I think that's when you get guys to become almost like connected with the staff. That's when you have the success. You've made progress with the players. You brought them together.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.